Oh, of course I start off without a working camera. Oh, there we go.
There you are. Hey mate, how you going?
I can't complain. It's too early in the year to complain, but no, I am doing well, Vaughn. How are you going?
Yeah, good mate, good. Good. Yeah, nice bright and early over here. It's
Yep.
still
What
dark.
time is it for you?
It's just 7 o'clock in the morning, but winter here is a bit sort of like back home. You wake up in the dark, you go to bed in the dark. Like
Yeah, well, I'm only a couple of hours on you, 11 here in Sydney, so not too bad. Day's
yeah.
underway.
Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant. I'm just trying to see if I can switch it to speaker view. There we go. So we don't have the note taker
Oh,
take
actually, no,
up.
kick it. Sorry, that happens just automatically. Feel free to kick it. Not
Oh,
needed.
right, right. Yeah,
Kick
cool.
kick that guy out. My modern world is I use the AI note taker, but I always just forget that it's there.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's
Look, thanks for reaching out, but yeah, what's the cunning plan?
yeah, well, I've heard some great things about what you've been creating and working with, and the cunning plan, I suppose, is I'm just really curious about how you're leading AI at scale. Essentially, you head of AI across 18 plus schools, and all this there's so much hype out there.
Yeah.
Just sort of want to cut the hype and get into what's working, what's not, like what are you creating, what's not, and basically I've put together some questions that will help me sort of like lead AI where I am, and then hopefully help others who ever listen to the podcast.
Sorry, I'm just going to close the door. I can hear people coming home, and yes, working from home today, so it's a little bit noisier. Okay, look, that sounds good. And I know I should know this, but it's a while since I looked at the profile. So where are you based?
I've just moved to Thailand.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah, yeah. So I'm here in Chiang Mai. Well, technically just out of Chiang Mai in northern Thailand. And yeah, I came over
That's a
in
change of pace, though.
massively. Massively. Like Australia for my entire life and then here, and it's so different, but such a pleasant pleasant change of pace from, working in the Department of Education for years, just high pressure, high, everything, to go in here, and it's like it's weird. It's like it's nearly like there's so much appreciation for what you do.
Yeah.
And it's like,
But I
oh,
also don't know how I should interpret that you literally have run that far from the DOE. Not just physically, but even pragmatically,
yeah,
programmatically. You're like, I can't think of anywhere more different than how DOE would operate. But
yeah, oh,
yeah, but a culture
absolutely
shift, how's
crazy.
that hitting you? Because
Uh,
and I don't just mean Thailand culture shift. I mean just even work culture shift. Has it taken some
yeah.
time to get used to, or are you just reveling in it?
Definitely, definitely. When I first got here, I had to learn the phrase sabai sabai, which basically means just chill. Like, yeah, I'm used to, 10, 12 hour just hardcore days, and then go here, and it's very much work-life balance in the opening address of like the head of the school's like intro to the orientation for the staff. She's like, look, if you've got a little bit of a lull time in the middle of your day, go for a walk, go to the gym, go to the pool. I was like, wow. We got
Gee Louise, like if you leave your desk for more than 5 minutes, you need to make sure your manager knows where you are. It's like, oh,
that's it. I'd feel guilty running across the road to go get a coffee. Like
no,
it's
well, congrats. I have to ask, have you got family there as well, or is it just
no,
you?
no, just me. So it definitely made the move quite a bit easier. Yeah. So
Enjoy it for all it's worth. They're amazing experiences. I did a bit of travel when I was younger, and yeah, I listen to me sound like the old grizzled veteran when I was younger. No, but absolutely adored it. So yeah, very
yeah,
jealous and
yeah,
enjoy it, man. Enjoy it.
amazing.
All
Because
right, I know we're
you're
both on
in.
limited time. So
Yeah,
the
mate.
other
Yeah.
question is, how long did you want to go for? What was your
So I think I've t roughly timed my questioning for probably 45 to an hour. Like it really depends on how long you want to draw out any specific things and like we'll go with the flow if we get close to that eight because obviously you got meetings to go to and all the rest of it
Yes,
and
sadly I will. But I am renowned for waxing lyrical, and I'm a storyteller. Um, So, a couple of things to know before we get started. I know both of these things, and they're both blessings and weaknesses. If I'm going too far down a rabbit hole or too far off reservation, I'm not offended if you want to bring it back in. I just want you to know that before we hit a
yeah.
record button, right? I know I am guilty of this. So yeah, if I'm going too far off that, if we're talking too much on something, just yeah, feel free to
Yeah.
bring it
Yeah.
back in.
Easy.
Never going to be offended. And
Um,
yeah, I will not watch the clock, which is a bad habit
no,
because I do
that's all
have a
good.
stop
I'll
for the end of the day.
definitely watch it. Keep us in the time. So, but I think
Awesome, man. Well, yeah,
yeah,
again, thank you for reaching out. Appreciate it. And yeah, happy to
yeah.
have the conversation.
Awesome, awesome. Well, what I'll do is I'll kick us off with a bit of an intro. I think this might sum up a bit more context for us, and then we can get into the questions.
Sounds good. I'm going to do one last thing before we hit record, which is just turn on my do not disturb so I don't constantly get alerts on my screen. Give me one sec. One of the things I love about Mac is this do not disturb mode.
Yeah.
Done. So I shouldn't get any alerts popping up. All right, over to
Fantastic.
you.
Fantastic. All right. Welcome to Create with me, Vaughn Littlejohns, the podcast about educational innovation, technology, and the creative approaches teachers are using to transform learning. Today's guest is Julian Ridden, Head of AI at the Anglican Schools Corporation in Australia. And Julian's doing something most people talk about, but few actually execute. He's leading tech teachers across 18 schools to build their own AI tools, not just use them, create them. His approach, build it by day, test it to save time, let teachers decide. Good tools survive, bad ones go to die. No endless planning, build, test, iterate. But here's what I'm wanting to understand. Why does this actually matter now? Why create when we could just buy? And more importantly, what happens after the workshops end? Because that's where most innovation goes to die. We'll get to into the how, the platforms, the processes step by step. But first, we need to understand why Julian believes teachers creating their own tools is the answer and what actually makes those tools survive beyond the initial excitement. So, Julian, welcome, mate.
Think that is the most awesome introduction, and I'm thinking, oh, it's just summed up what we're doing. I don't need to add anything to that. I'm out. No, thank you for that awesome introduction. And yeah, looking forward to chatting.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, Julian, I really want to go back to the moment you first realized teachers needed to create their own tools, not just consume what ed tech companies were selling them. And what was happening in your schools that made you think this current approach isn't really going to work?
I actually want to answer a different question first, 'cause I think it's important to answer the one that you've just done, which I want to talk a little bit about where I've come from, and
Fantastic.
only because it's going to largely influence the answer I give to what you just asked. Then, my background is I actually started off as a teacher, so I started off as a modern and ancient history teacher here in Sydney at a school called Motti St Angelo, where I also was IT manager, so I was both teaching and responsible for the tech. Somehow fell into STEM, so how the ancient history teacher became the STEM teacher is a discussion for another time. But I very much started as an educator first and very much lived and breathed that space. After having been in a couple of different schools, many years, I joined well, what we lovingly refer to, and I do say it's not as a negative, but the dark side. If the light side is the classroom and the teaching, I joined the dark side of becoming a vendor, where I joined an organization that many will know called Moodle. I was in Moodle in the very early days, supporting schools and universities. I was with them for several years, joined another company called Instructure, which make the Canvas LMS, which again, I'm sure many people have heard of. And I've worked in several ed techs, not necessarily in a sales role, but, kind of as that membrane between the company and educators, like being able to translate both ways, which I
Mm.
absolutely loved. And it's only recently, it was about June last year, that I was asked to join the Anchor Schools Corporation in this wonderful new role of head of AI. So I feel like coming back to the light side. But that background is important because it influences exactly what you just asked. Like, why don't I believe that the ed tech can do it? Why do I strongly believe in what comes from the teacher side? Um, I will never disparage ed tech companies. There are good ones, there are bad ones. There are companies that make awesome products. There are companies that make not so awesome products. But most of your ed techs usually exist because it's someone who's got a passionate belief that they can solve a problem.
Mm.
And they'll do that to varying degrees. The ones that I found I worked best with, the ones that I thought were the most awesome, were usually the ones that hired ex-teachers or ex-education leaders, someone who truly understood what the problem is that we're solving.
Mm.
What's happened over the years, though, is more and more ed techs have been bought by the bigger sharks. The little fish gets bought by a bigger fish that gets bought by a bigger fish. And the ability to truly deliver on what a teacher's real world problem is has become more and more diluted over time.
Mm.
So again, there are absolutely smaller companies out there doing amazing things, and there are some large companies doing amazing things. But as a whole, I've really seen that these tools are becoming more and more generic, more and more widespread because of how this ecosystem keeps feeding on itself. So when I've joined this organization, and this is where I've now promised I want to answer your question. I warned, by the way, for everybody watching and listening, I warned Vaughn beforehand. I said, I'm a storyteller. If I go off the reservation, let me know. So I think it's worth sharing that. I do love working this way. Um, I very much believe as we come into AI, I personally genuinely believe that AI is a cultural and technological game changer. And
Mm.
I recognize this the moment ChatGPT came into the world. Its first release, far from perfect. Its current release, far from perfect. But this was no longer just, oh, here's a new piece of technology that does X. It
Mm.
is generative AI in particular is literally changing everything we do and how we work, including how I work. Its impact specifically on education, I think, is the biggest generational shift that we have seen in over 100 years. And I don't mean to spin hyperbole on that. The ability that we have a tool that understands context, that potentially can personalize, can differentiate, that can heavy lift, is mind blowing
Mm.
in its potential capability. Right now, though, we're in our early steps. We're in a wild west, right? Lots of tools promising the world. And again, look, let's mention all our favorite brands, be it Gemini, Copilot out of Microsoft, your Perplexities, your Claudes,
Mm.
lots and lots of individual AI companies. And of course, lots of other companies who are either adapting their technology to use one of those things or building their own. For me, the biggest challenge I found, especially coming back here, is when I sat with my teachers and my education leaders. So, as you mentioned, we've got just over 18 schools here, and they're based all around New South Wales, where, or if people in Australia were all the way like Dubbo and Orange up into like more the central rural New South Wales, into lots over in Sydney and down near Wollongong. So we're quite spread out, and we have schools of various sizes. We have some of the larger, I don't you like using the word, but you're richer, more socially I say what's the word I say higher states of living, high
Mm.
socioeconomic.
Yep.
Too early on a Monday morning for my brain to function, but we have really small schools with low socioeconomic. We have this wide base, and the idea that a one tool can do everything, just reality has never existed.
Mm.
In the AI space, where there is a new shiny tool coming out every week,
Yeah.
where the existing shiny tool is updating every month, is too much for educators to deal with.
Hmm.
And more importantly, the methodology in which how we interact with AIs is also evolving so rapidly. 2 years ago, everything was text-based. Oh, I need to talk to an agent. I'm going to chat with Copilot. I'm going to chat with Gemini. I'm going to chat with ChatGPT. Most people, I think, even those hopefully watching and listening to this will understand this. You actually go, by the time I finished this conversation with the AI, I could have done this myself. By the time I fact
Mm.
checked it and got through all the hallucinations, I could have done this myself. So this is where I wrap up. I'm going to come back to the other question. So what I realized very quickly is if I can sit down and understand what the true problems are, what are the things that we're trying to solve? Not what does the AI shiny thing say? What does the ed tech
Mm.
promise me? What is this thing that we are doing in our classroom that an AI can genuinely give me a boost, can genuinely augment me? And how can I, in my role, find tools or create tools that meet that specific need? That's where we get genuine use. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
using this not because I've been told to, not because I've been forced to, not because I have to. I'm using this because it does this so much better for me. I don't have to use this tool, and this tool. I can go to one place. And as we talk more about the tools that we've built, that's really what I'm trying to do is how do I genuinely solve real world teacher problems that don't replace but augment what they're trying to do. When
Mm.
we hit that, then I think that's AI's sweet spot. So back to
Yeah.
you. That hopefully
Yeah.
answers a bit of why we're doing what we're doing.
It definitely does. And I'm curious on because you're exactly right. There's that common theme of like, well, I could have done this myself and so on. And I could imagine because there's a principal, there's a series of leaders in each of your schools. Like, what's the uncomfortable truth that they're sort of having to grapple with right now that they may be refusing to acknowledge?
There's a couple uncomfortable truths. And again, I don't say this just to be diplomatic, but we do need to recognize this. This is new technology that's moving at a rapid pace. And as educators, we all have inherited history. So this is the history teacher in me on technology, and most of it has been negative.
Mm.
I built a whole lesson plan around using this Moodle in the classroom, and then the internet crashed, and I had no internet. The first uncomfortable truth is I don't need to learn this. I've been teaching this way for X number of years. My students are all very successful. I don't need to engage with this. I do think the head in the sand approach is sadly more dangerous today than ever before. Not because AI is better or shinier, but it is now how our world is working. It is a social shift as much as it is a technological shift.
Mm.
I believe, and again, you'll hear me use that word a lot, it may not be everybody, but I believe that our role in education is to prepare our students for the world. That might be lifelong learning, that might be where they're going to in university, but it also might be how do I prepare them for the workplace of today and tomorrow, and how do I prepare them for the world that they live in?
Mm.
Second uncomfortable truth, our students are all using AI, often without even knowing they are using AI, which
Yeah.
is really dangerous.
Yeah.
They're fed an algorithm. And that's an AI. It's not generative AI, but they're fed a thing. Weird story to tell. Vaughn, when you and I were growing up, like we discovered music because we'd be listening to a radio, and then I'd go to
Mm.
the record store and I would go and listen to CDs. Sanity Music was the brand that was big when I was younger. No longer
Yeah.
exists.
Yeah.
Streaming killed it. But where I had to go and I'd discover music and I'd hear what other people liked, and I would have to think about this. You realize that the kids growing up don't discover music. They think something that they like, and then the algorithm throws them more of what that's like, which
Mm.
then creates this self-perpetuating. So the artists that are big are the ones that the algorithm push. AI in now many ways is forming what people like. It's a scary way to look at how algorithms work. We have the same thing in our social media, be it Facebook echo chambers or what's happening in Snapchat and Insta.
Mm.
But our students are using the AI. How are we as educators preparing our students for future learning? AI is now in many of our universities. How are we preparing them for the workplace? AI is now becoming a requirement in many jobs already. How are we preparing them for the world that they're living in now? If we put our heads in the sand, we are not enabling our students and we are doing disservice. So that's my
Yeah.
belief and one that many of our educators share. So that uncomfortable truth that AI is not just a piece of technology. It is, but it is more than that. It's become a social shift. It's not something like it's not the yo-yo, it's not the pog, it's not going to be big for a couple of years and then disappear from whence it came. We're going to see a constant emergence and adaptability. And yeah, I believe our role as educators, apart from teaching our syllabus, is preparing our students. And we can't do that if we don't understand and utilize these tools ourselves, even as uncomfortable as that may make us.
Yeah,
So that,
yeah.
that for me is the biggest uncomfortable truth I like to address.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. It's creating for the reality of the students you're in, not the past that teachers grew up in. It's embracing that. Well, what's in our control right now? Well, we can just learn this thing and then go to the next thing. But that's a common area of like, you know, teachers are overwhelmed by, and you even said it, like there's so many things updating all the time. But I want to come back to one of the things you said before. You said, you're pretty much creating everything with AI. You're using all this kind of stuff to innovate, but also just to, see what works, see what doesn't. So what are you building at the moment that maybe is changing how your schools are actually operating?
Yeah, so look, we don't build everything. I actually do want to stress that. We are recommending tools. Some
Mm.
of our schools are Microsoft and or Google ecosystems. We're very big believers. I love Gemini. We have a lot of Gemini use. Our Microsoft schools obviously use Copilot, which is also doing, some amazing things. But they're both kind of more generic tools, as in here's a
Mm.
text box, or if you're lucky enough to have access to maybe tools like Notebook LM, you have some more specific capability. But again, they're AI tools that aren't necessarily built for a specific purpose.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I realized very quickly in my first couple of months, I just spent a lot of time talking with teachers and listening. I'm a big fan of the phrase, as much as no one will believe it who are listening to me talk so much. I am a big believer in you've got two ears and one mouth, so you listen twice as much as you talk. We've all had our
Mm.
parents use that on us, but especially in roles like mine, understanding what the impact is on the educator and the student to think about where we should be moving forward was really critical in any kind of success that I think we're going to have in this role.
Yeah.
And that supports, everything that we're trying to do. And so the first complaint I heard, common sense, everybody will understand it. I don't have time to learn this new tool. That's a reality. Every
Yeah.
day a new Shini's coming out. Gemini's adding new features every second day. It feels like
That's
Notebook
it.
LM keeps adapting.
Yeah.
So the first thing about that time constraint, I think, is very real and quite genuine. But the second complaint, which again I think everybody will agree with, is it's taking more time to use AI to do this than if I'd just done it myself. And the more I kind of listened to this coming out, and I
Mm.
was living it as well. I could go to my tool of choice was ChatGPT. I'll talk about why that's changed in a second, but it used to be ChatGPT. By the time I was going there and asking and giving it information and asking and giving it context and up, it would have been faster to do it myself. So as I was hearing this more and more from the schools I was working with, I realized that we were all actually asking the wrong question.
Mm.
Because if I'm trying to take task A that I know how to do, and I want the AI to do task A, and then I still need to validate whatever that output is to make sure that's accurate and contextual and applicable to what I'm doing, then yes, probably would have been faster in most times doing that yourself. The real question isn't how do I use AI to do what I'm doing now? It's how can I use AI to think differently about
Mm.
what I'm doing now? What's not the function that I'm trying to do? What's the actual process? And this is where I'll talk about the first tool that we've built. So it used to just be called the unit and lesson planning tool, which was boring and no one could remember the name of it. In fact, if any of our schools are listening to this, this is literally being launched. This new version is being launched as we're coming into the beginning of term one, which starts next week. We've called it Spark because it's there to spark ideas, but it is a tool for creating units and lesson plans. Now, absolutely, I can go into any AI and say, help me create a lesson plan for this. And I
Yeah,
might
yeah.
upload my curriculum documentation. You're going to hear me use the word NESA. People aren't familiar. NESA is the New South Wales Academic Standards. Like that's our HSC, our curriculum. But each state, each country, you'll obviously have your own. I could always upload those things. But that was the wrong question. The
Mm.
question is actually when I create a unit of work, I'm actually thinking about not just what is it I need to teach, what is it I have to cover, what are the outcomes I need to map against, but I'm also thinking, okay, so what are the lessons I need to build and what are the resources I need to go with that? Creating this is actually a bigger process.
Mm.
So with the tool, yes, I can go in and say I'm a stage three teacher and I'm doing a cross-curriculum piece of work with English and geography and I can choose the outcomes. And yes, it will suggest First time I stop myself, it will suggest, oh, here's a unit of work you might like. It is not a chat, it's a nice interface. In fact, I'm even tempted to share a screen. In fact, you know what? I think we should, if we're going to talk about
Yeah,
these
yeah.
tools, right? If I share a
Yeah,
screen,
go for it.
I won't go too deep. This isn't meant to go too deep, but I want to express why I think these are the ways we should be working. Um, Hopefully this screen, I do have a big wide screen that might actually be too big. Actually, I can just share a window. There we go. No, that's the wrong window, I think. Which window are you seeing? Are you
Yeah, we
seeing? No,
got
you are
the
seeing Spark.
Spark, yeah,
Okay.
units work.
All right. So first thing is this isn't a chat interface. This isn't lots of going backwards and forwards. If I want to create a unit of work, I can choose my stage. Maybe I'm stage 3 and I'm doing something with English. So I go here and this has loaded up the full curriculum of different elements. We're doing reading comprehension and spelling. Actually, I want to actually do this as part of the history curriculum as well. So we're going to do that in relation to Australian colonialism. So first of all, I haven't had to upload files. I haven't had to give context. The tool's been built to do that.
Hmm.
I can then guide it. So I might go the forming of the Australian nation, and I can say I want this to be something that goes for 8 weeks with explicit instruction that uses flipped class methodology, where I want to use modeling and exemplars, and I have a mixed ability class. Now, again, I could go through all of this in chat, but I would have had to think about what am I telling it about? And I have to write sentences. Here, it's
Mm.
a quick click. I can even say, can you give me an idea of how I can do this? And it will suggest. So the first thing I want everybody to see, first of all, what I want you to see is that I still have a bug. I love that I haven't launched this yet. So excuse me, I can see a little bit of code, but this is a text box. I believe that AI is not good enough to replace us. It isn't. It isn't now, and it won't be for some time.
Mm.
It may get there. I'm not going to go down that line. But today, it isn't. So everything it suggests should be something that you can edit, that you can change, that you can build upon. Let's just go, I'm happy with that. And I want to generate a unit of work. You also notice I can provide a document. If you already have a lesson that you've built or a unit structure that you've got, you can bring that in. What this is now going to do is it's going to come up with the ideas of how you could teach those curriculum elements that you've suggested against the idea of what you want to cover. Here we have, what is a colony? Oh, sorry. Dancing through, which one did we just create? No, the unit of work.
Yeah.
No, that's the wrong one. I do apologize, everybody. Again, I love the fact that I am doing things live and forgetting which one I'm working on. Here we go. Forging the Nation, Australia's Colonial Journey, Stage 3 English. It's doing things that are going to save me time. So here's the overview of the unit. Here's the rationale, which is pulled from our curriculum. Here's how it
Hmm.
aligns to our standards. Here's some examples for assessment. Here's the terminology, which in Australia is even provided. It's come up with a suggested structure, but again, please note that everything is a text box. And this is why we called it Spark. I didn't want to say, here is your lesson plan. It is,
Hmm.
oh, here are ideas that you can go and change the order, change the text, whatever you want to do. Okay, already you can see hopefully this has saved you time, because when it comes to planning units of work, most of the time taken is actually trying to come up with the structure and a schema. My first 3 years as a teacher, I never built these. I always stole off somebody else because I was intimidated, I was scared, and I didn't know how. And I think most teachers would agree with those statements. So this allows me to start that. But then I'm thinking about the process. Oh, but now I want lessons to go with that. So I'm going to be doing 2 lessons this week. So I can go, give me some ideas of how I do lessons for this unit of work. It's got ideas that again I can change. I can change how long I'd be teaching for. Maybe this one's 30 minutes. And when I go build, it's now going to create the lesson. So again, what I want to go too
Yeah.
depth into the tool, what I want you to see is what I've thought about isn't how do I replace A with B? How am I giving you a sharper pencil? That's the wrong way to think of AI. What I'm actually doing is this isn't a new pencil. This is a whole new way of drawing. You can now draw things that you couldn't draw before. It's not a pencil, it's a whole new tool that's letting you to reach those things. So now we can see we have a lesson here. It's tied to a syllabus. It's got what the structure would be. Again, everything can be changed. Everything can be edited. Everything can be overwritten. And then it does cool things like, how would I differentiate this? And it's got ideas for differentiation that you
Mm.
can edit. I need resources for this. Well, great. Generate me a worksheet. It will now create a worksheet for the lesson that you've just done. I need glossary cards. It will go through and generate glossary cards for the keywords, and it ties to curriculum. I need an exemplar. I need a podcast. You can see the ideas on the left. All of this is still powered by the technology under the hood. In this case, I'm using Gemini. All of this, though, solves the problem that the teachers were telling me they had, which is I don't have time to do all these things. I don't have time to learn how to ask Gemini for this, then go to GPT for this, and then go to Notebook LM to do that. So our power users will still do those things. I'm not
Yeah.
there to replace them, but this tool genuinely saves time in this process. We're now asking the right question, and the human's always in the loop.
Yeah.
Talk about how I'm sure you want to know how we built this, which is probably where we'll go next.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, did you
Exactly.
want to dive into any of that about the why, about why we're building? Because I think this tool best shows. It's one of a few.
Yeah.
This one best shows what we're trying to do.
I think you've highlighted it really effectively. Like, some of the major, I suppose, experienced educators, leaders, they say, well, I can do that so quickly because it's just, it's part of my DNA now. I'm creative. I get like they're in the creative flow state. They create the units, they create the lessons, they get, they're inspired by the actual pedagogy and it can empower them. And these tools can, by the looks of it, it's fantastic. It enhances, here's some options. Now you can customize, you can flesh out rather than being an expert in prompting or understanding context rot and all the rest of it. So one of the questions I'm sort of come back to is like, awesome, the teacher now can put through their basic and get something that's going to give them a really nice launching pad off to go. But from your perspective, I've seen, we're building, we're creating, but the time commitment just to even iterate to that level to create the product, amazing. But we're talking about creating AI, and it's never going to be perfect with our first creations. There's going to be some flops. What do you think
Mhm.
for you has been like the challenge of like it's working well, awesome, but that's a very like, nearly polished product, which is amazing. What's been like the thing that's flopped? What was it? Why did it die? What got you to that point?
First of all, you mentioned something I want to tie back to. I actually keep stressing that AI shouldn't save you time. And I know that sounds like a weird thing for me to kind of step upon. AI should allow you to produce a better output in the same time. When I talk about creating a lesson and the process of what it takes to create a lesson, I don't want people to think that by using a tool like Spark or whatever your tool, doesn't matter what you're using, that I can go, oh, it took me an hour to create it before, and now I can create it in 10 minutes. I
Hmm.
think that is a flawed statement. What I think brings in its current state, where we are today, who knows what tomorrow will bring, but today is AI can enable you to do things that you could not do before.
Mm.
A teacher couldn't create a podcast by themselves. A teacher couldn't create a nice infographic. Um, if it can allow me to create higher quality output, then that's fantastic. But the time it takes, I tell them expect the same amount of time to, Vaughn, address your point.
Mm.
The output often isn't right the first time. Okay, great. So I've built a custom tool. I put a whole bunch of stuff under the hood to try and make it better. When it generates an infographic, it's got a set structure to make sure it's going to be pedagogically aligned. I have a cool thing called a visual hook that will tell the students what will we learn and how will you apply it. And it generates a cool poster with those things. But it is still AI. It is still not perfect. You will still find yourself going, oh, actually, can you regenerate that? No, I'm going to change that text and do something else.
Mm.
And I build that in as a requirement. Look, if you end up coming out and saving a bit of time, hey, that's great. But don't go in with that expectation. Go in with the expectation that I can actually create something of better output that I could not have done before.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's where I say it's about new ways to draw. In the past, I couldn't have done that. I would have had to have bought something or gone to teachers pay teachers and buy that resource or
Hmm.
so that's the first thing I want to really stress because when you go in with that right expectation, then yes, I've tried to create an interface that's more user-friendly. I've tried to remove the need for ongoing chats backwards and forwards and for the teacher to have to upload lots of documents. But it doesn't replace the fact that the teacher still needs to check it, that this tool is powered by AI. It will still make mistakes, and it's their job to iterate. But let's finish up on this. This is, again, it's a stupid story, but it's the best way I start. I often run training. In fact, today I'm running training with one of our schools. And the first thing I get them to do is I say, put your devices away. I want you to get out a piece of paper and a pen, and I want you to write down all the ways that you can use a paperclip. And they go, oh, that's easy. I said, yep. And you've got 10 seconds starting now. And everybody's madly scrabbling to write down 10 uses of a paperclip. All right. Show of hands. Who had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? On average, most time I do this example, you get between about 5 to 7 uses of a paperclip. Great. All right. Now I want you to open up AI, whichever one you want. And by the way, if you're listening to this, do this test. It's wonderful. Okay, I want you to go to your AI choice and ask it how many uses of a paperclip. And I'll guarantee you in 2 seconds, you'll have 30, 40, 50. But they're not going to be good. They're going to be random. And again, I always get people to read out the funniest ones. We had some great ones like, the world's smallest chopsticks. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't say it was a good use. It had no context. I hadn't asked the right question. And I said, but also look at that list. How many do you think are really good? Oh, well, there might be a few. So what if we asked a follow-up question like, okay, this is great. Now shorten the list to ones that I can use in year 3 to teach this. Oh, now you're going to get a better list. Now, in that same 10 seconds, you will come up with ideas that you could not have come up with 10 seconds by yourself. Again, just follow the analogy. I'm not saying this is exactly how we're doing things in the real world, but these tools are helping me come up with ideation faster. It's helping me plan it. Now, by the way, if I had not spent 10 seconds, if I'd spent 10 minutes, absolutely, I would have come to these things myself. But it can help you get there faster. And if you invest that same amount of time, you're going to get, hopefully, usually, a far better quality of output. That is, I find, the right question I need people to come with.
Yeah.
Don't come to this world going, oh, I can now spend 5 minutes doing this task instead of an hour.
Yeah.
Expect to spend the hour, but expect to be able to come out of it with things that you could never have done before. That is how I try to approach it.
Yeah, it's so interesting because that's exactly what reality is. I'm talking to lots of teachers and they're saying, "Oh, I've had these ideas for so long, and now here they are. I can physically like the space between idea and execution is like dramatically reduced, and you can produce higher quality output if you've got the tools are a necessity." But you would see it even in those workshops. So I'll get into the build technical stuff soon, but in those workshops, you'll have like the overwhelmed teachers just like this is just way too much, head in the sand kind of thing, and then you got people using custom GPTs and all the rest of it. Is that small little task for you the aha moment that breaks the teacher through the barrier of like, oh look, I don't need to be perfect. This is just about testing, iterating, seeing what I can create.
Look, it is a big aha moment, but also for another thing that people like us have been using AI for a while take for granted. People who aren't used to the technology, and again, I want to kind of bring it back to the tech layer just for a second. They've grown up either with no tech and then we've come into the age of search engines where everything is a query. The other thing I like about, and again, I know I just rushed the example with everybody just then, but the idea I talk about this 10-second process is it introduces the idea that this is a conversation, not a query. That is usually the
Mm.
biggest aha moment for those people. It's like, it didn't get right, but you can go, okay, can you now shorten the list and tell me good for this? Oh, great. Can you actually give that to me in a table? Oh, great. Oh, can you give me a link so I can download that? Oh, great. When they start to realize that A, it's a conversation, and B, it's in real language. You don't have to learn technology, you don't have to learn terms.
Mm.
And if we have time, if I've got a room of people who are a bit more savvy, I'll even show, well, you can hit record, you can turn your camera on, you can turn your mic on, you can even make this, it doesn't have to be text-based. You can turn your camera and say, what am I looking at? Can you give me 3 good ways of how I could use this in my classroom? But when I bring up this idea that it is a conversation and that it is iterative, that I find is usually the aha moment
Mm.
because they've come from a time when I would go to a search engine, or I'd go to a website but use their search bar and search for this. And then I'd search again and then I'd search again. Then I might follow a relative link. But when I can ask for something that's specific to me and just dive into it, yeah, that for me, I find is usually the bit, especially with newer users to this, is the aha moment.
Yeah,
And then I
yeah.
think about, well, now that you know that, I pause myself because the other phrase that I want people to start adopting, I'm going to pretend I invented. I'm sure that someone else has used it as well. But AI for me is the start of what I call truly transparent technology, technology that you don't see.
Mm.
Best example, my very first computer, Commodore 64, old school. It came with an instruction manual this thick. I had to learn how to assemble the thing. I had to learn how to connect the tape drive to it. I had to learn how to put the tape in. I then had to learn how to use a command line to load the tape. It was something that was really complex. Here is my latest computer that I got.
Mm.
It didn't come with any manual. I turned it on and it said swipe, and I swiped, and there it was. By the way, there's still a learning curve to it. I had to spend time to investigate to use it in its full potential, but to just pick it up and use it at its basic level took no training. AI for me is really our first step in education to this idea of transparent tech. I can just talk to it. Park my history of, oh, how do I write this? What's the right way of doing this? Just how would you say it? And if it didn't
Mm.
explain it right, talk to it a different way. And then if you're finding value, yes, I'm happy to point you to some courses and training just like this device so you can learn how to use it better. But this idea that it's becoming more transparent, so it's easier. I will actually give a product a shout out here. One of my favorite products at the moment is Canva. I don't
Mm.
mind shouting it out because A, it's free for every educator. It doesn't matter where in
Yeah.
the world that you are. But in the past, I had to learn how to use Photoshop to make a design, and that was months of learning.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
I use Photoshop from version one. It is not a simple tool, but I can now go to Canva AI, and say, I want a picture of this, and it gives me a picture. Go, actually, can you make it brighter and make it look like it's done in pencils? And it will do that.
Mm.
All of a sudden, I haven't had to spend hours learning all the tools, all the processes, all the steps. I can still learn that to do more things with Canva,
Mm.
but that basic level is becoming transparent. And again, I talked about how in the early days AI excited me. It wasn't because ChatGPT on its first release was perfect and did everything. And there's the fact I realized that here's a tool that for the first time I can upload a piece of text to and go, can you reword this so it drops to language level, 2 year levels in language? And it could do it when that would have taken me hours. That I could take my lesson plan and go, actually, I'm dealing with a new year. Can you give me a variation on this lesson plan that focuses more on X? And it was able to do that at an 80% success rate.
Yeah.
That kind
Yeah.
of idea of transparent technology and conversational inquiry based technology, that's the aha moments I try and get through. It's not the hows, it's not the detail, it's not that Notebook
Yeah.
LM can do podcasts. So again, so I apologize, I've probably gone a bit too rambly on that, but I
No,
think
no.
people
It's
can often
it's
focus too much on the output rather than this why and what makes it a big deal. And that for me has been it.
yeah, I think that's really the important part because if you're, a very time poor leader or teacher, it doesn't matter. You're going to be time poor no matter what role you're in. Getting the why is really the thing that justifies the point we even move to try something new to begin with. I want to go back to like just coming to say the Spark and the deployment and moving that across, campuses and rolling it out. I've been vibe coding for quite a while now, and there is definitely a technical gap there. Like there,
Majorly.
there definitely is. And if you don't have that technical understanding, and you go from Canva and you move into Gemini and you move into Claude Code and all the rest of it, for the average school leader is just so time poor. You sort of need a dedicated team person in there to help, unpack all of this. How you actually, solving the deployment issue between like let's build this thing, let's, hook in the back end, and then let's go out. Are you working, yeah, how are you solving that?
I wish I had all the answers because I know exactly what you're getting at, and I'm not going to pretend to sit here and have those answers. I will share one truth. I feel genuinely privileged to be in this role. This organization realized that they needed to allocate resources to support it. And my role was born out of that. We
Mm.
need to have a dedicated resource. This can't sit as part of ICT or a part of education leadership. We need a dedicated role. And I was lucky enough to be hired into this position to be my role every day is following the tech, working with our schools, running PD, building tools. Don't get me wrong, do I wish I had another five of me? You bet I wish I had another five of me. But again, what many of our schools are discovering is that they want to allocate a person. Now, most of them can't allocate a full time, but yes, they most of us remember in the early days of IT, when I say early days, like let's go back 15 years, we used to have a role of like an IT integrator, an ICT integrator, someone whose
Mhm.
job was, they were still a teacher, but the job was how do I integrate this into our curriculum? It was this usually like a point 0.2 load if you were lucky, maybe a point 0.3. But we're seeing more and more schools going, actually, we need to recognize people in our staff who might have a passion or an experience or a somewhat knowledge of this, and how can I enable them to help us? And not all our 18 schools, but some of them now again, are identifying and enabling them to have at least in their job role somewhere a role
Mm.
to support their staff. What I am trying to think of, how can I use AI to augment me? At the moment, I am a team of one. Um, and we do a lot. I think we punch high, but we punch high because we use AI to do a lot of these things as well. I have a
Mm.
wonderful AI agent that scours my inbox to reply to things. As we talk about how we build tools, I'm going to show a live thing that I'm building at the moment. I'm actually building a tool that creates guides for me. So I can easily create guides to share with people so that instead of me spending 3 hours building a guide, which I used to, I can now maybe build a guide for somebody in 30 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need
Brilliant.
to recognize that this does need support. And
Mm.
it's not just PD support, it's a technological support. I've mentioned I used to work for Moodle, I used to work for Canvas. I'm blessed to be a bit of a unicorn that understands teaching and understands tech. Great, I get to bring both of those things together. AI is not a technology problem, but it is. It's a worse statement to try and explain to people.
Yeah.
AI is tech, no denial, but it's not a technology problem. It's a new way of implementing that allows us to solve things we could never do before, that is implemented through technology. So
Mm.
having somebody that sits in between those two things, I have found has been critical to success. So yeah, we need resources, we need support. Teachers need training. Again, don't let anything I'm saying as I wax lyrical suggest that any of those things are no longer true. Um, but we do need to be asking the right questions and providing the right answers. And I do think that's something that we're not doing particularly well in the education space.
Yeah. I suppose that comes down to like, the common thread you always hear about acceptable use, not acceptable use, all around policy. And most schools I talk to don't even have any sort of approach yet. And they're reaching out and they're asking for expertise and they're asking for just guidance of like someone who doesn't necessarily have all the answers, but is just trying. And I suppose my question is like, across the different cultures, every school is different. You've got large schools, small schools, highly diverse, very specific. What are you finding that, how are you approaching, the policy talk, the across the network of your schools?
Yeah, I'm so glad you've opened this. We've talked so much about the fund building and tool side. My role is also very much responsible for policy as well. The very first thing I did was looked at what are the current policies. In Australia, we don't have a lot. We've got a lot of frameworks. In fact, our government, one of the things I always give credit to, our federal government came up with a framework of AI education use, which A is very good, and
Mm,
B, they built it in the first 6 months of Chat GPT. You don't see governments moving that fast.
no.
But what it isn't is a set of rules, a set of directives. So everybody's still kind of interpreting. So the very first thing I did when I joined, and I mentioned I spoke lots of schools, and yes, they were all struggling with AI cheating, plagiarism detection. Oh boy, we can spend another hour and talk about my views
Yeah.
on AI detection. I have some very strong and not very
Yeah.
politically correct ones.
Same.
But no, but the thing is, but no one knew where to go, and everybody was looking for guidance. And so that was actually the very first thing I did. And I used AI. I built a notebook LM. I took the Australian Generative AI framework. I took what the Catholic Diocese had put out, because we are a religious organization, that they had a fantastic document that they put out around AI use. I took what had come out of the UK. I looked at the Australian privacy principles. Now, I can't be an expert in all of this. I'm not a lawyer, for starters, let alone an academic of depth. But by building a notebook LM of all these different resources, here are the policies, here's what's there, I was actually then able to use that to generate the ideas to go and work.
Mm.
The next thing I highlight is something that I love about how this organization works. When you work at a diocese level with the Catholics, if you're the Department of Education in New South Wales, they are a controlling body. Again, I don't say that as an evil, it's just how these bureaucracies work. But if you're a Department of Education school, then you work the way the department says you're going to work. If you're a diocese school, the diocese is controlling what tools you have and how you do things. That's actually not how the Anglican Schools Corporation works. Each school has its own local leadership that makes its local decisions. We do have things like centralized IT for support. We have things like my centralized AI role. But my role there is as a guide, as a mentor, and as an assister. So I work with them. What's the problem you've got? Great. Yeah, here's a policy that I've written. Feel free to take this and adjust this to suit your needs. I'm not, luckily, trying to build something that works for everybody.
Mm.
The Spark tool that I showed you, I'm not forcing that into every school. I'm not saying to every school you must use it, which I wouldn't do even if I had that power, just for the record. But I'm building a tool going, hey, I've heard what you're all wanting. Here is a tool that I think will help you. One thing I didn't show in our very quick demo, but when a person goes to their profile, they can choose their school and it automatically loads up that school's custom learning intents. Like many of our schools will have custom things built on like BPL methodology, or maybe built on
Mm.
Hattie's work, or whatever it might be. But when you choose your school, the AI now knows about your custom learning intents and how your school designs curriculum. So it's going to map to that a bit. But yeah, my role, thankfully, and I mean that because I think it would be terrifying to be in that position of saying, I need to dictate how 100 schools need to do things.
Mm.
Instead, I go in as a guide, as a partner to say, hey, I'm dedicated to do this for you. Here is a policy document I've written. No, don't use my policy document, but use it to influence yours. Maybe you
Yeah.
didn't think of something I added, or maybe it's something you did that mine counters. Do you want to call me? Let me know, and I can tell you why I've written it this way. It is a much more pleasant way to work, I'll be honest. But also it means that each school is unique based on its socioeconomic needs, based on its curriculum, based on its pedagogical model. Um, and I don't believe in one size fits all personally. I understand why we need that in organizations, but
Mm.
yeah, my role is to influence. So yeah, so I
Yeah.
do policy, I do guidelines, I share my notebook. So I did create this AI Australian policy notebook that anybody can now go through and query. And again, AI is not perfect. We still have to validate it. But how Notebook LM works, which is great, it uses the brain that you've built rather than going out to the web. Its hallucination rates, its failure rates are far lower.
Yeah.
It
Exactly.
allows me to help those schools. So yeah, that
Yeah.
hopefully answers the question. But we need
It,
more support, and it's going to continue to grow.
mm.
We're lucky enough to have a me. I don't say me as me personally. I don't have the ego for that. At least I try not to. But this organization has created a dedicated role, and we're constantly listening to our schools to figure out how this team will need to grow over time. And that's how we're trying to address it.
Yeah, I think that's really important. There's a really nice phrase, seek to understand before being understood, and then that leads to co-creation. Essentially, the schools that I help is the same kind of thing. Go in, listen, don't just force. It's the quickest way to resistance. And
Um, And again, I'm not here to throw bureaucracies under a bus. I understand when you have large scale organizations. I'm just lucky enough to be in an organization where we're small enough that we can be agile. And again, we're designed to be a support mechanism, as what we call ourselves our group office, to support our schools. But as I said, it's one of the reasons I joined this organization is this balance of us seeing this as a support is a great way to work with education in general. So
yeah,
yeah, I very much enjoyed that.
yeah. We're definitely coming close to the end of time, but I've got just a few questions to wrap us up. And there's a like if we were to, title a chapter of a book, how do we use AI tool to create across schools? What would be like three non-negotiables you'd tell every school leader at the moment?
Yeah. Um, it's hard to say this without existing prior knowledge. So I'm going to try and explain this. The first thing is not to focus on the solution, but to focus on the problem. It's very easy for all of us to be what I call a solutioneer. You
Mm.
know, if someone's talking to you, immediately coming up with a solution where I find it's actually better to understand the problem first. And hence, like Spark came out, people coming to me with multiple problems that I could have created multiple solutions for. That as I listened more, I try to come up with that. Secondly, and this is something that I think there's a bit of a false narrative where AI is when it comes to tool creation today. Um, Everything I've shown you in Spark and all the tools that we're building, I use vibe coding, and it is brilliant. It has allowed me to create. But today's AI can only do what you can do, only faster.
Mm.
It's my favorite quote. It can only
Yeah.
do what you can do, only faster. Why? Because you need to be able to vet its output. You need to be able to know what the question is that you have to ask to get to that output. And then you need to be able to validate that that output is accurate and is safe, especially in technology. Like, is this secure? Is this
Yeah.
going to have privacy issues? Um, I am, from all my years in EdTech, a product manager. I used to be a product manager for APAC with Instructure doing Canvas, right? I've I'm not a dev I was a developer back in the Moodle days. My developer skills are here, but I understand how code works. I understand what a function is, what a variable is. And as a STEM teacher, I used to teach coding.
Mm.
The beauty for me is that I now have an understanding of how to ask. Now, again,
Yeah.
I lack the pencil to write really good code, but now I have a toolkit that can do that for me. But I have the knowledge and the capability to assess it, to
Mm.
make sure that it's right and to ask the right question.
Yeah.
So this idea that, oh, I can just go to Claude or I can pick up Basecamp, and I can have it build an app for me that's going to be perfect. I sadly am going to tell you that is not true. Um, but if you either have a background knowledge or you're willing to invest the time to understand how those things work, then, oh my God, yes, you can create absolutely incredible things that, to create
Mm.
Spark would normally have been about 6 months worth of work and a development team and a QA team and a back end developer and a front end developer. Like, it would have been a huge project
Yeah.
that I was able to do as a team of one in 2 weeks. So the book I would write is not to expect miracles. Um, AI doesn't replace you, AI augments you. And it's a phrase I say both to dispel fear in my educators, which I do, but also because I genuinely believe it.
Mm.
These tools are augmenting my current knowledge and allow me to do more than I could ever have done before. So, yeah, the tools that I use so many cool tools. In fact, knowing we're out of time, and I know that we both want to talk about it, I do want to talk a little bit about how Spark came to be, like the process behind it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and if anything that might illustrate the point I just made. So you're right if we go there for the
Yeah.
last
That'd
bit.
be brilliant.
So look, I'm going to try and share my screen, which is going to be fun because we're going to do this live, which means this could end disastrously. But hey, we're all teachers, we like to adapt on the fly. So I'm going to share, but this time I'm going to share my entire screen. All right. So can you see my
Yeah.
Chrome open? All right. So let's talk about a tool that I'm building at the moment. I'm building a tool called Clarity. Clarity is a tool that, in fact, let me just open up the tool. So again, I obviously not prepared for this, so excuse the fact I'm going to jump around a little bit. I'm using a tool called Firebase Studio, which is created by Google. I'm not here to sell products or services. It's just one I'm liking to use. What I can do in this tool, however, is use a thing called Studio, which allows me to talk to an AI to build an app.
Yeah.
So Clarity is, I want to build something that's like Scribe. I want to build a tool for guides. By the way, this isn't finished yet. I'm building this. You're getting a bit of a like way into how we're doing it. Currently, it's not finished. Its UI is a bit all over the place. But the way that I work it is I can actually go through and I can talk to an AI to say what I want to do. Let me just scroll back up because I want you to see the kind of questions that I'm asking. Because what you
Mm.
will notice, or what your viewers will hopefully notice, is that I'm asking technical questions. For instance, I've set this up to work with React and Node.js using Tailwind, which is a CSS provider. I had to know that.
Mm.
I had to tell it that I want to move from Tailwind 3 to Tailwind 4. It created a project timeline for me to approve, but I had to know what these things meant. Oh, we're going to start with upgrading the Tailwind CSS, then we're going to update configuration files, and we're going to update your components. Again, I had to have this knowledge to be able to guide the AI on what
Yeah.
to do. But let me go back a step. Even before getting to here, I had to know what I wanted. my favorite tool at the moment, without any double guessing, is Google Gemini. Right now, Google Gemini is so far ahead of every tool. Now, this could change tomorrow. I'm talking about today.
Yeah,
Today,
exactly.
Gemini is so far ahead of every single tool. So I came into Gemini. I'm actually loading up the chat. Here we go. And I'm going, okay, let's literally go to the top of the menu. Here is Spark that I've built. Attached is my screenshot of my app that I've made. I want you to create a UI dashboard that utilizes the same, but does it in shades of purple instead. And in fact, going a bit further up, I've even said I'm actually creating a tool that's going to be creating guides. To
Yeah.
go even further, I need ideas to what I'm going to call this tool. So I got the name out of AI. Okay, great. So I'm now going to be doing this scribe clone. Here's this, generate me a UI. And it generated me a UI. But again, I like this, and then I've told it what colors I want it to use. Okay, great. And then I've said, okay, give me a UI, what a guide would look like. And it created this. Gemini and Nano Banana Pro is astounding at these kinds of things. So
Yeah.
I'm having a conversation, not technical, about how I want my tool to look. I then go into Firebase Studio and I upload this picture and I go, okay, build this app. And it built
Yeah.
near perfect mock-up. And then I said, okay, I want this to be a real app with a back end. Now, by the way, this is where people I want you to hear. I then had to say, we're going to use a Firebase database, and I had to tell it what my data schema was going to look like. I had to have that understanding. But then it took this screenshot, which first of all, it built just as HTML. It's going to simplify the terminology. It built just as a flat code, but it wasn't real. It didn't do anything. But then I told it I want a database and it's going to have this schema. And then it took that UI and mapped it to a database of that schema. And then I was able to go through, and Clarity I've been building over the weekend is, I would say, now 60% complete.
Yeah.
And by the way, yes, you can now go through and click on steps and update. In fact, what everybody's seeing on my screen is that currently it's slightly broken because I was doing a big update before this call because I wasn't going to show this. But again, I love talking about this. You can see the discussion, like, the header's not pulling the logo anymore. Please fix it. I'm going backwards and forwards.
Yeah,
Let's go
yeah.
back to a previous version so you can see what's functioning. But the
Yeah.
magic of this is I am now the product manager. I am now the owner of this. My development team is what's now been replaced. Now, by the way, I still need to check the code. It is not always writing solid code. It's not always writing secure code. I am still responsible for the output. But I didn't need a UI designer. I could work with Gemini to come up with a UI. I didn't need a front-end designer. I could give this UI to this tool to say, build that. I then didn't need a back-end designer, but I did need to have the knowledge to guide them, to tell them exactly what it is I needed them to do. So I love the fact that I had been breaking it. Again, this isn't finished yet, but this process of being able to talk to it and having that understanding is very much how we built these tools. And this is how Spark got built. And but by the way, let's finish up on this last statement because I think this is the last one that's, how do I stop sharing my screen? There it is. Many companies, and again, I know your people are viewing from all over the world, but the examples I'm about to give are both Australian. Two companies last year made the news, Atlassian and Commonwealth Bank. Both these organizations went, oh, we've done a whole bunch of assessment. We can replace all these people with AI. And they literally put an AI in and they sacked like whole departments of people. That first of all made the news for obvious reasons. But what made the news even more was a couple months later when those people were being rehired. Because the AI could only do what we could do. When that person who had that knowledge, that information, that context was no longer there, no one was there to check the AI output. And the AI was not doing things the way that the human would have done it necessarily. And it was making way too many errors. And they realized they needed those people back to be the human in the loop.
Yeah.
If we hit AGI, we might not need that anymore. But we are not there now, and we're not going to be there for some time. So yeah, I know it's something I harp on about, but first of all, as we talk with educators, your job is not under threat. I mean that not just because I'm a rose-colored glasses. You are not under threat. If you were to right now go, I'm going to replace myself with AI. I'm in a task school. I'm just going to use Spark, and you used everything that Spark did without any human in the loop. Your lessons will suck. Your parents will complain and your school
Yeah.
will probably fire you. But if you use that tool and iterate on it and work with it, you'll build something fantastic that you could never have done before in less time than it would have taken you with tools that you could never have dreamed existed. And your students will love you because you're recontextualizing. You now have things personalized. And by the way, personalized not just because I've changed its reading level, but maybe I've turned this into audio. I've turned that into a video. I've turned that into an
Mm.
infographic. I never had the time for any of that, but AI can do those things for me, but I still checked it.
Yeah.
That's where we are. That's the message I'm so keen to end on because, yeah, it's augmenting what we can do in the classroom. It's doing the things that I was dreaming I could have done in the classroom. I wanted to meet every student where they were. I believe most educators do, but I lack the time and the money to buy and develop and get those resources out. Now, AI allows me to start doing those things. And as I said, it doesn't replace you, it augments you. It
Mm.
turbocharges your capability. And back to where we started this conversation, the tools that I'm starting to build are how can I augment myself? Like the guides tool. When it's finished, I'm going to be able to record myself. I did a quick test of this and it worked. I'm going to record myself screen sharing and it's going to automatically take screenshots and create the steps.
Yeah. Brilliant.
I still have to check it. I'm still going to
Yeah.
have to update it, but it's going to take me half the time to create a resource of far greater quality than by myself. And the tools I
Mm.
continue to build for my teachers echo that same sentiment. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
probably the best way of wrapping up the why and the how.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think that really sums it up nicely. It's, find the problem and solve it really well because eventually, the output that you're creating is only going to enhance, those human capabilities, those connections that you have with your kids, the things that we can do, and it just amplifies what you already have as a skill set. And if you're bringing in expertise from leadership or teaching, or it just can amplify if, you just ask the right questions, frame it away, use
And
it,
I just realized there's one bit of narrative that's really important. We haven't talked about students this whole conversation. And I've kind of intentionally done that because
Mm,
you as whoever's listening, watching to this, you can't teach students how to use AI until you understand how to use AI. I don't mean the technical steps, I don't mean the individual tools. I mean you need to understand why would I use this? The biggest assumption
hmm.
that every teacher is making, really divisive comment, is that my students are using AI to cheat. By the way, are some of them doing it? Absolutely. They use whatever they wanted to cheat. Like
Yeah.
it hasn't made cheating less. But what is interesting is a whole bunch of studies are starting to come out that's actually saying the rate of cheating hasn't changed.
No, that's it.
But what has changed is our definition of cheating. Oh, so a student went to Gemini and said, "Hey, here's my idea. Give me ideas on how to do it. Is that cheating?" Well, they asked AI for help on what to write. Yeah, but why is that cheating? And but again, this is
Yeah.
purely for contention and for role play here. Like because normally they would have asked their mum or their dad or their friend or many students in Australia have a tutor.
Yeah.
We didn't have issues with that before, but we have an issue with this. If a student is using it to generate final output and not declaring it, that's plagiarism. We have a policy for that. I don't need a new policy. The policy
Hmm.
is if you're claiming somebody else's work as your own, that's plagiarism. Okay, great. But we need to understand how we use AI. I use AI to iterate. I use AI to come up with ideas. I use AI to take my idea and make it better. If I was a student today, I would take my essay question, I'd put in bullet points what I want to cover, throw it into an AI to go, have I covered everything? It might suggest 4 other bullet points. Okay, great. I'm going to bring them in. I then might write what I want. I'm going to use another AI called Grammarly, which is going to spell check and check my grammar. Our job is to understand how these tools work. And by the way, and then to clearly articulate you can't
Mm.
use spell checkers for this. We've said that for years. Okay, great. We need to be thinking, you know what? For this task, it's actually really important that I see your ideation process. So for this task, you can't use AI to ideate. I want you to take Romeo and Juliet and contextualize it into a modern day setting. I need to see that you understand it. So you can't use AI for that. But you know what? It's you've done that, but I now want you to create a fun script. If my task was not assessing their ability to write, but just their ability to create, then maybe you can use AI for that, but share your prompts. Tell me how you taught an AI what you wanted.
Yeah.
Again, we could wax lyrical on this for
Yeah.
the next 2 hours, but we need to think you have to understand how you use it. the
Yeah.
why you use it, because once you have that, you can finally start understanding what your students are really doing, both for good and for bad, and then set those expectations in your classroom. But until you have the context, it's near impossible for you to set that. And that's just kind of where I want to finish up
Yeah.
at, because the
I
students
mean,
are our endpoint.
yeah, and
We
that's
don't need to meet
exactly it,
pyramids.
mate. Yeah, that's exactly it. Well, Julian, mate, your pragmatism it just cuts through the hype, you know? If the tools don't save you time, it dies just a natural death. If it can help you enhance your skills, it augments it. And at the end of the day, it comes down to communication and back to the students. If you don't know what you're doing or how, why, or how you're going to actually influence the people that you're in charge of serving. So, for everyone listening out there who's, creating a tool, they're testing it out, you're trying to save time, thinking about like that analogy of you're not here to save time, you're here to use the same amount of time, but just create a better output. I really like that phrase that you used, Julian. And then just start teaching it to someone else. I really like the principle of teach before you're ready. Figure something out 20% and then go, okay, I'm going to just share this because we inform our own understanding by trying to translate it down to somebody else in whatever way. So just a final one. Where can people follow your work if where are you most active sharing what you're doing?
My problem is I'm so busy, I'm not sharing nearly as much as I used to. And I wanted I don't like using resolutions. I have objectives. My
Yeah.
objective for this year is to share a lot more. I go by the nickname of Ridden, so EDU, then my surname RIDDEN. I'm usually most active on places like LinkedIn, but where I share tools, code, things that I'm using. I also want to do more I did dump X when it became a dumpster fire, but I know many teachers are back on there now over the
Hmm.
years. And I also present a lot at conferences. I am an open educator by trade. I love sharing what we do. I don't believe that anybody should own this knowledge or information.
Mm.
So yeah, look, if you look for EduWritten online, you'll find multiple places. Most of them have probably been rather dark for the last couple of months because I've been so busy doing. But
Yeah.
my objective this year is absolutely to be sharing. And yeah, the education AI groups online are the most magical you'll find
Mm.
of a whole bunch of teachers who are just sharing their experiences, sharing their knowledge, sharing their passions to hopefully enable those around us, and that's how you'll get better. So, yeah,
Yeah.
EduWritten, just search for that. But I do
Yeah.
promise that next year you'll see a lot more content than the last few months.
Yeah, fantastic, mate. Well, we're now in a time where we're creating rather than just consuming. So, mate, thanks, Julian. Your insights are really, tangible and pieces we can actually take forward. So, looking forward to whatever you create next and putting that proof over the plan is definitely the way forward. So, appreciate your time, mate. And
Thank you
yeah,
so much for the invitation. I hope my ramble was of some use.
that was fantastic. All right, mate.
Thanks,
Yeah.
everybody.
Cool, man. That's yeah, fantastic. Thanks heaps for that. I genuinely
I did
appreciate
warn
it.
you I'm a storyteller, but hopefully it led
Yeah. I think
to genuine stuff.
well that's the perfect thing. That's why I like talking to educators who are storytellers. We inspire and you can draw out, the emotion and the need of, come back to the why. It's as simple as that. So
But
mate,
yeah, having so much fun, and it's like yeah, building a whole new scribe tool.
yeah.
And it was working until about an hour before this session when I decided to update Tailwind and I've broken the whole UI. But yeah,
It's always
I built it in the weekend and I'll be
yeah.
using it to build the guides for Spark
Yeah.
this week.
That's
So that
honestly it's
world is
crazy.
just amazing.
Yeah, like more time would permit, like, working alongside, just, sharing the screen. This is what I'm doing. Those like collab build sessions. I was doing that for a couple of cohorts I was running a couple of months ago. And the eye-opening part was people just, how you shared your prompts, and this is how I actually work. The eye-opening part for the people who I was working with, like, oh wow, that's what you do. Like, yeah, I'm putting in screenshots. Here's my voice detection. Here's a photo of a scribble that I've just done. Like,
Yeah. And
it's
my boss is always stunned. He's like, how, like, he'll ask me for something, I'll usually get back to him, within the hour. I'm like, how did you do it so fast? And I'm like, well, you've hired a head of AI. But rather than just showing off, I then like to, so this is the tool that I used for that. This
yeah.
is how I did that.
Mm.
But again, this world for me is saying I could spend hours trying to find the right tool and then buy the right tool because
Mm.
I am lucky enough to have this capability and this knowledge. Because also the best thing is what I'm paying, because I'm using the Gemini and the Google Stack and the Google tools, just because that they're best for purpose, I
Yeah.
find. And I turbocharge them with Claude, by the way. So I also have a Claude agent. So often if I'm going deep, I'll actually go into Claude.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Same.
I can still get this built for purpose tool that's costing us maybe 15, $20 a month in credits,
That's
where I
it.
would have paid $100 for the first user license.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, he said that really just changes the world. I
Yeah.
am now absolutely late. I have to
Yeah.
run. Would love to
Same.
stay in contact and would
Yeah, mate.
love to pick your brain.
Yeah.
So maybe as
Yeah.
my term gets quieter and I know you're still settling in there, but would love to reconnect, man, and more importantly, also learn what you're doing because
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure I've got things I can learn there as well.
Yeah, I would love to, mate. Love to. Yeah, I think that well, honestly, it's one of the main reasons I'm trying to do this podcast is, connect with people like you, and I feel like we can learn so much quicker the more we collaborate on these things,
Because we're
and
all making up as we go. Nobody's an expert. This is so
genuine.
new. Nobody is an expert, and I love that.
Yeah.
And that's the again story. I wish we had more time. I always talk about the Wild West. Right now, it's the Wild
Mm.
West.
Yeah.
But we're at that period where everyone's kind of forming their communities. People just went out looking for opportunity. Then a whole bunch of religious groups would get together, or the gold miners got together. They started forming their own communities with their own rules, with their own tools. And we're
Mm.
at that point now.
Yeah. And the crazy cool thing about that is like if you think of a Wild West town, all the shop fronts, they're just a facade. It's like the vibe
Mm.
coding. It's just facade. You go inside, there's nothing there because
And there's
everyone's
nothing there.
trying to figure it out.
Steal the analogy because the more you dive into the analogy, the better it is. And so
Mm.
then we're trying to create the rules, but some towns have sheriffs, some towns have marshals, some towns are actually going at a state level because we're going to start banding together because we've got enough of our towns that have the same shared thing. But everybody's making it as they go because you're forming these new norms
Yeah.
as individuals, then as groups, and then as bigger groups. The more you dive into the Wild West, and then the more you realize how what we're doing in AI is people just go, oh, it's because we're doing mad things. Well, yes, but the whole analogy plays out.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's every time I present, I bring up a picture of the Wild West and I tell that story, and they're like, oh, so where are we? I said, right now, we're probably about, well, you just said, because I love that. I bring up the same example. I said,
Yeah.
right now, we're about township, but most of them are facades. Like,
Yeah.
Spark's a real shop, but Clarity, don't go upstairs. Just don't go upstairs,
Yeah.
right? And I'm working with people like yourself and like Dan. Obviously, you've connected with a whole bunch
Mm.
of the same people that we're all discovering tools and we're all figuring out new ways of prompting. Yeah, so yeah,
Yeah.
I wax the record. I'd love to stay connected. Would love to
Yeah.
compare notes, share what we're doing. I'd love to learn what you're doing, and
Yeah,
yeah, best
mate.
of luck with the
Yeah.
podcast, man.
Yeah. Cheers.
Send me the link. Like you sent me this, but
Yeah.
I actually haven't watched one yet.
Oh,
So
right.
send
Yeah.
me a
Yeah.
link.
I'll send you something over. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I'll try to get this edited probably within the next week or two, before I head off to Australia, and then, yeah, we'll
Are you
definitely
going to
touch
be in
base.
Sydney or where are you going to be based?
Um, I'm going down the coast, down into Merimbula for my mate's wedding.
All right. All
So
right. But if
pretty
you're in Sydney, let me
pretty
know. I'd
far
love to
away.
grab a beer, but it
Yeah.
sounds like you're doing far more exciting things than that.
No, it's a very, very quick trip around, just trying to in and out.
Cool.
But yeah, definitely next time I'm over for sure, and vice versa when if you've ever visited Thailand.
Yeah. No, weirdly, that might be happening for different reasons. But look, I'm not going to start conversations. I have another meeting in 12
Yep.
minutes that I haven't
No.
prepped for. Awesome to meet you.
Yeah,
Have a
you too,
great
Julian.
day.
You
Shoot me a
too,
link
mate.
when you're ready. And
Yeah,
yeah, please do stay in contact. Would love
unreal.
to
Yeah.
keep picking the brains.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Cheers,
All
mate.
right, man. Catch you later.
All
See
right.
ya.
Bye-bye.